And then after I got to Asia, I was just like, well, this is nice. And then I just stayed. This is cash. I mean, people use cash, but they're like largely the elderly who are having trouble switching to the digital economy. But now I don't even use a credit card or anything. I just scan something with my phone, beep, and it's just automatically paid for. Everyone else seems to use Alipay, but I'm a big fan of WeChat Pay. I don't know why.
And I also see your Twitter space. You are constantly, if I'm not mistaken, defending China. Why are you doing that?
Well, one of the things as an American is that I'm in China, so I'm in a position where I need to be a kind of cultural ambassador. Like when I was in the United States, I was actually an anti-war protester. So when the United States wanted to invade the sovereign country of Iraq in 2003, I was carrying a sign saying, please don't do that. Hey, that's not cool. And so
welcome you to China.
All right, thank you. All right. I'm from Ghana, and this is my channel called King Kwesi, whereby I talk to people just like you to share your unique stories about China. And I must say thank you so much for coming on board to share your journey here.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Can you please tell my audience where you're from, your name, and how long you've been in China?
My name is Jason Smith. I've been in China for 10 and a half years, waiting for 11. I'm originally from California, kind of all over, but largely from the Bay Area where San Francisco is. I live here in Beijing, but I've also lived in Wuhan.
So you've lived in China for a period of 10 years, almost 11 years.
Yeah, 10 years of Go ahead.
Why did you leave the US? Like, it's everyone's dream to go to the US, to live in the US. Why did you leave your home country to come to China like 10 years ago?
That's a good question. I think there are great things about the US. Taco Bell, for one. It's a delicious restaurant. But honestly, I was a bit bored, for one. And secondly, I was looking for, I had studied history in my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, world history. And I really wanted to see the world, and I hadn't. And I thought, what better way than to move to the opposite side of the planet and live somewhere that's completely foreign, completely alien to me. And then after I got to Asia, I was just like, well, this is nice. And then I just stayed.
So you mean history brought you to China?
Yeah, the study of world history made me curious about wanting to travel around the world. Originally, I moved to South Korea in 2010, and I lived there for 1 year, almost to the day. And then I moved back to San Francisco for 1 more year. And then I realized that everything was kind of boring to me because it was just not different anymore. When you live somewhere else, you get this experience of everything being challenging, everything being unique, more unique, because you grow up in a place, it kind of becomes vanilla ice cream, right? It's like a little oh, okay, where's the chocolate in this? And so I moved back to Asia, this time to China. And once I got here, I was just like, wow, this is so exciting. And it's never stopped being exciting for me. So I just stayed.
Like 10 years ago, what was the most exciting thing about China that kept you here?
Oh, goodness. I think everything has changed each year or two. It's been different. So I moved to Beijing, and one of the first things I noticed coming from San Francisco, which people think is a large city, it's not. It actually has a population of less than 1 million. My first bus ride from the airport, because my company took me into the city, I was looking up at these buildings that I don't even know how many stories they have, 70 or 80 stories, just ludicrously tall buildings. And I was like, wow, did you see the movie Zootopia? It was like that. It was like going from the countryside into the city. It was so overwhelming and so big and so powerful that I was just taken immediately.
So you are fascinated by the life here in China?
Oh, yes. I'm fascinated by the life here in China. Obviously, everyone talks about the food. It's true. I'm not sure where.
So, I mean, for that period of time living in China, what have you been doing here?
Yeah. So I originally started off as an English teacher because it's easy to get a job as an English teacher if you have a bachelor's degree. So I came as an English teacher, but then I slowly shifted into media, and now I have my own radio show.
Radio show. What do you talk about on your radio show?
Actually, we do a lot of what you do. So we have kind of a schedule. We do 3 cultural issues about like connecting the East and West. It's called The Bridge Podcast by Acorn Studios. You can find us on Spotify and other platforms. And we talk about like how is China and other countries around the world, Africa, Europe, the United States, North America, elsewhere, how our cultures are more similar than they are dissimilar, or what are the similarities and dissimilarities. But we also have guests such as yourself on and interview them about their time in China or their ideas about certain cultural issues around the world.
Right. So, living in China, you've seen China's growth for the past 10 years. What is the most astonishing growth that you've seen in your life here for the last 10 years of China?
Well, I would say a couple different things come to mind. So one of the first things, obviously, is like digital payment system. So when I got here, everything was cash. And I actually got a couple of fake bills. So I use them as bookmarks. I have a fake 100 kwai bill and a fake 50 kwai bill. Great bookmarks. But no one uses cash. I mean, people use cash, but they're like largely the elderly who are having trouble switching to the digital economy. But now I don't use a credit card or anything. I just scan something with my phone, beep, and it's just automatically paid for. Everyone else seems to use Alipay, but I'm big fan of WeChat Pay. I don't know why. It's just very convenient. Everything is in WeChat. You can just use WeChat for everything. So that's a big change. So like even a fruit seller on the side of the road with their like, wooden cart, like you can go and buy like fresh tomatoes that they have literally taken into the city that day, but they will have a little QR code and you just scan that to pay for the tomatoes after you've haggled or whatever. Usually I don't haggle, honestly. The tomatoes are fine for whatever cost they want. But that's not the only thing. I mean, the pollution was a big deal, air pollution. So one of the things from 2012 to 2015 or 16 was the sky wasn't always blue when it's supposed to be blue. But now it's like cleaner than most of the cities around the world. I look out right now in Beijing and the sky is perfect blue, little clouds, very lovely. So China had like a problem that started around 2007, 2008 and carried on for a little while. People were like, hey, fix this. So the government did. And that's one of the really amazing things about living in China. Everything moves so fast. So yeah, there was a period there was some air pollution, but now it's clean. And I think that's the same with all kinds of other energy. So China's actually moving away from fossil fuels and they're moving towards renewable energy like solar. Has more solar in the world than any other country, has more hydro and than any other country. In fact, I think they built a dam in Ghana, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Bui Dam was built by the Chinese.
Yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, partially paid for in cocoa beans at global market prices.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And I also see your Twitter space. You are constantly, if I'm not mistaken, defending China. Why are you doing that?
Well, one of the things as an American is that I'm in China, so I'm in a position where I need to be a kind of cultural ambassador. Like when I was in the United States, I was actually an anti-war protester. So when the United States wanted to invade the sovereign country of Iraq in 2003, I was carrying a sign saying, please don't do that. Hey, that's not cool. And so like I come to China and I want to see my country, the country I'm born in, the United States, and the country that I've chosen to live in, China, I'd like to see them get along amicably. And imagine the things that these two very powerful countries could do around the world if they cooperated well. Like look at the BRI, the Belt and Road Institute, what China is able to do with partners with their own agency who've decided to enter into arrangements with China. The United States oftentimes sends food aid, but that's not correcting problems. That's not creating the modernity that oftentimes the developing world needs. If China and the United States were get on the same page and cooperate well, we could build the 21st century into the most humanitarian century in human history. And I hope that that's something that we can achieve.
Right. So do you think like China and America will be on that level in our generation?
I hope so. Let's hope that cooler heads prevail. There are some American leaders like Jeffrey Sachs, for example. He's a Harvard professor. He works for the United Nations Sustainable Development Network. And he's one of the people that advocates that the United States and China should get along. He gets a lot of presidents' ears. So he can call the White House, for example, and people pick up the phone. And he's one of the people that is advocating for China and the United States to get along so that we can come up with better sustainable development solutions for countries that still lack the modern infrastructure that both China and the United States have. If people like him are able to take control of the helm at the United States, then people in China very much want to cooperate with America. They want to work together. If Americans decide that they want to cooperate with China, which I hope they do, then we are looking forward to a very beautiful future for all people.
I mean, living here for a period of over 10 years, if you are given the opportunity to make a suggestion to help enhance the understanding or the relationship between China and America, what are you going to suggest?
Well, I think that there's a concept in American politics right now called decoupling, where a lot of people who are afraid of change and they want to see America succeed want to decouple from China economically. They don't want to buy things from China, and they would prefer if China didn't buy things from the United States. This is very short-sighted. If you look at history, which I did, if you look at the UK's empire was basically sinking at the same time that the United States was rising during the 20th century. Part of the reason that the UK was able to hang on to some form, semblance of self-respect is because they coupled with the United States. And the United States and the UK were able to create an amicable economic trade system that helped the UK. If the United States, I'm not saying that they're going to like descend into any kind of chaos. I don't think that's true. I don't think the United States is going to collapse by any means whatsoever. The United States will probably maintain a lot of power in a multipolar world. If people in America, though, want a stronger economy, trading with China is an outstandingly good way to do that. Now, the United States does have some of the most advanced solar panel technology in the world, but China, for example, is able to make far more and cheaper, faster solar panels than the United States at a slightly less advanced technology. So if the United States, for example, is serious about combating climate change, it should be importing Chinese solar panels into the United States, at least for now, until some of the technology in the United States is able to be made at that level, because we could start to really slow down carbon emissions around the world. Imagine if trade between the United States and China coupled more, and we were able to take in these technologies into the United States. We could do away with fossil fuels in the United States in the next few years. Now, that might not advantageously affect a lot of Americans immediately, but globally, that would do a lot for countries that are in islands in the middle of the ocean, where they're really worried that if the ocean rises, their entire civilization will be destroyed. So United States and Canada per capita and Australia are three of the largest emitters of carbon in the world. If they took in these Chinese technologies immediately and started changing their power grids, we could actually save, millions of people, in fact, all of our lives, from a bleaker future.
Right. So just China and America need to understand that they need each other to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Good. Well said.
Right. Okay. Can you sing a line of a Chinese song for us to sign up?
你是我的小呀小苹果。
Yeah. I like that song too, man.
You can't not, because it's brainwashed. All those old grannies for years.
Everywhere that song is being played in loudspeakers, and yeah, you hear that all the time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on board to talk about your experiences here. And I mean, China, we only experience China when we come here. Because like for me, when I was moving to China, the things that I was saying about China never encouraged me to come here until I moved here. My daughter was born here. So if you ask me about my experience there, it's totally different from what people would say back home. So I feel like people should travel the world, experience life at first hand, and make their own judgment.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well said.
Yeah. So thank you so much, man.